Always lovely to start Monday morning with you. Loads to talk about. Look, we talked a little bit earlier about what's going on in Israel and Gaza, 6 months on, obviously yesterday, their anniversary of the October 7th massacre. And the thing that I found absolutely stunning was this Henry Jackson Society poll taken, interestingly, of British Muslims, but also of the wider general British public, as well as a comparison for where people stand on what is going on in Gaza and what happened on October the 7th. And the results were, shocking. Absolutely shocking. Perhaps there's lots of people saying not surprising if you've been paying attention in recent years. Similar polls taken after the 7/7 attacks here in London revealed also some very worrying, large disparity between the views of the general public and the smaller Muslim population. But this poll has shown, I think, absolutely outrageous, that 46% of British Muslims said they sympathise with Hamas. Obviously much higher than the general population. Also, that only 1 in 4 British Muslims believe that Hamas committed murder and rape in Israel on October the 7th. Astonishingly, only 62% of the general public think that. So what on earth do the other 38% think? There'll be a load of don't-knows in there, obviously. But if you've been watching TV, reading newspapers, knowing what's going on, listening to the radio, you would know what's going on. You would see the evidence before your own eyes. Unless you're Owen Jones, obviously, when apparently, unless it's a Hollywood starlet saying, oh, he touched my bottom, that's definitely to be believed. But when you've actually got evidence from someone who hid in a bush for hours on end while watching people gang rape a friend of hers, no, that doesn't count as evidence. Doesn't count as evidence. But how worrying is this? And what does it tell us if people in this country who maybe even born in this country, large number of these people will be born in this country, support a prescribed terrorist organisation, have sympathy for them, and don't believe the reports they see on their TV and radios every night?
We have a small proportion of this country that are far right, and they hold unacceptable views. And every person that you just listed, all of those people, if there was a scintilla of evidence that that level of people had held those views, there would be a national outrage. The news would stop for days and days and days until we got to the bottom of this. We have accepted in this country that it is acceptable to basically deny evidenced atrocities against Jews. In my mind, denying what happened on October the 7th is akin to denying the Holocaust. In fact, it's arguably worse because there is so much more evidence. It's so recent. You can go and speak and see people. They boasted of it themselves.
This is one of the crucial things. It's not something that Israel said happened. And indeed, the numbers, we were told it was 1,400. That was then revised down to just over 1,100. And, we've actually had, Israel has, when they've revised the story, they have less exaggerated. We had some claims early on about 40 babies being beheaded, which was not true. 1 too many. I don't know why I feel the need to add that bit, but 1 too many. But there were some stories, there were some reports, obviously some miscommunication between IDF soldiers and some reporters, and some stories got out that were not true. But those are the tiny minority. As you say, a lot of the knowledge we have is actually stuff that Hamas itself has put out. Not stuff that just found on their body cam imagery, but actually images that they have put out themselves of what they have done. They've said they've committed atrocities and they would do so again. It is literally in the makeup of their organisation, their constitution, that this is what they would do. But what does it mean for our society if... And it's a growing population, the Muslim population in this country, and people who are born in this country, to school with non-Muslims and live alongside Muslims, work alongside non-Muslims, who I'm brought up a liberal atheist, would never dream of not accepting as fellow Brits. But if there is a growing minority of people in this country who hold views where they are supporting a terrorist organisation that has done this, there is something we need to talk about.
Over 40% of British Muslims, according to this poll, believe in certain circumstances that they can be sympathetic towards those admitting that they rape and kill Jews. They live alongside Jewish people in this country. I believe firmly that if this attitude is not targeted aggressively, if it is not surgically removed from British society...
What do you mean by that?
I mean that we need to start looking at the kind of things that President Macron has done in France. Go after these organisations that are peddling this dangerous misinformation. That means going into mosques
And the hate preachers.
and shutting them down if necessary, because I do not believe it is sustainable in the long term to have this filth, dangerous, nasty, murderous hatred spouted every Fridays in mosques across this country, and that is the only conceivable
And it's
explanation
being taken up by the left wing in this country as well. I mean, some other stats that were found by this is a survey was carried out by JL Partners. The polling company was founded by James Johnson. He's the former Downing Street pollster, very reputable. Almost half of British Muslims, again 46%, say Jews have too much power over UK government policy. That compares to 16% of the general public. They believe, on average, British Muslims, 41% that Jews have too much power in the media, and 39% say Jews have too much power in the UK's financial system. And a lot of this is, you know, basic sort of anti-Semitic trope stuff, isn't it? But we know, again, people like me who get accused of Islamophobia for stating the simple fact that we know that let's call it what it is, Jew hatred in the Middle East is widespread among the general population and fomented often by their leaders. And when you import large proportional population from countries where this is a normalised, accepted viewpoint, you're going to have this in our country. But as you say, in terms of tackling it, I think Emmanuel Macron in France, he has actually gone much harder on trying to tackle this. They have, I would say, a bigger problem in terms of certainly the terrorist atrocities they're seeing as well. And they've really woken up to it. But how do we tackle that without pushing people who have mainstream views further to the extremes? Because what is really fascinating in this is that the younger you are, the higher educated you are as a British Muslim in this country, the more likely you are to believe these things.
Look, I'm not a liberal, I'm a conservative. I'm pretty open about that. But here's the thing. If you believe in liberal democracy, there comes a point where you have to muscularly, defensively, robustly defend that from those that don't believe in it.
You can't be tolerant of intolerance.
You have to, at a level, say that, do you know what, it is not acceptable to come into this country from overseas. Let's just say as part of our migration policy. If you believe that it is acceptable under any circumstances to rape and murder Jewish people, because...
Or indeed anyone.
or indeed anyone. But let's be honest here, Julia, we don't have a problem with hatred of Muslim people. I don't believe that there is a community in this country that would accept that 40% of people believe that it is acceptable to do this kind of thing to them.
Well, I do think there are far-right groups.
There are absolutely problems with anti-Muslim hatred, but there is not a single, other community. There have been blow-ups in the recent years between the Hindu and the Muslim community in Leicester, for example. I guarantee you go into the Hindu community tomorrow, you ask these same questions, you wouldn't catch numbers anywhere like it. This is a specific, particular
We can't tackle the issue
resolving
unless we acknowledge the issue. And it is interesting how little play this poll has got. And I said it reminds me of the poll that was taken by Channel 4 post 7/7 in London after the terrorist attacks here. And obviously they wanted to prove that, look, see, people share the same views, whatever faith, and it showed absolutely that was not the case, and people justifying what had happened there. Look, I want to hear from you on this, because this is very, very alarming. We asked about this new poll, which says almost half of British Muslims said they sympathise with Hamas. What is your reaction?